Why a man who loves deep is the most dangerous man alive. Let me say something that is going to go against everything you have been hearing. Society did not teach men to suppress their feelings. That is the narrative, but that is not what actually happened. If anything, the last 20 or 30 years have done the complete opposite. Men have been told to open up more, express more, cry more, be more vulnerable, talk about how you feel, share your emotions, do not be so closed off. That has been the message pushed into culture, into schools, into households, into every media platform that exists. What society stopped teaching men, what nobody is passing down anymore, what fathers stopped showing sons, is stoicism, not the suppression of feelings, not pretending you do not feel anything. Stoicism is the ability to feel everything and still not be controlled by it, to feel the full weight of something and still stand straight underneath it, to be moved internally and completely unmoved externally. That is the difference. And because that teaching disappeared, because we stopped raising men who could feel deeply and still lead from that depth, we now have a generation of men who follow their emotions instead of leading them. Men who are moved by whatever they feel in the moment, men who react instead of respond, men who mistake emotional expression for emotional strength when those two things are not even in the same category. And that is exactly why we have the weak men we have today, men who cry publicly for attention, men who lead with their vulnerability before they have earned the trust to be vulnerable with, men who are so eager to be emotionally open that they forget emotional stability is what actually creates safety for the people around them. But I am not here to talk about weak men tonight. I am here to talk about what a real masculine man actually is underneath all of that noise. Because a truly masculine man does not feel less than other men. He feels more. He carries more. He loves deeper than most people will ever come close to understanding. And that depth, that capacity, is exactly what makes him the most dangerous man alive. Now, when I say dangerous, I want to be clear about what I mean, because this word matters. Not harmful, not destructive, not volatile. Dangerous the way a mountain is dangerous. Dangerous the way a man who has decided something is worth everything becomes dangerous to every obstacle standing between him and what he loves. When a masculine man loves, truly loves, he does not do it halfway. He does not love you and keep a piece of himself tucked away just in case things go wrong. He does not love you and maintain emotional distance so he can exit cleanly if it falls apart. He decides. And when a man of real substance decides, everything that he is moves in that direction. His resources, his time, his protection, his focus, his willingness to stand between what he loves and whatever threatens it. Now, when I say dangerous, I want to be clear about what I mean, because this word matters. Not harmful, not destructive, not volatile. Dangerous the way a mountain is dangerous. Dangerous the way a man who has decided something is worth everything becomes dangerous to every obstacle standing between him and what he loves. When a masculine man loves, truly loves, he does not do it halfway. He does not love you and keep a piece of himself tucked away just in case things go wrong. He does not love you and maintain emotional distance so he can exit cleanly if it falls apart. He decides. And when a man of real substance decides, everything that he is moves in that direction. His resources, his time, his protection, his focus, his willingness to stand between what he loves and whatever threatens it, his willingness to lay down his life without hesitation if that is what it costs. John 15:13 says there is no greater love than a man who lays down his life for those he loves. That is not poetry. That is not a metaphor people say at church and forget about on Monday morning. That is the actual ceiling of masculine love. The highest expression of what a man can give is his life. And a man who is capable of loving at that level, who has built himself to the point where that kind of commitment is real and not just something he says, is not soft. He is the most formidable thing you will ever encounter, the most committed thing, the most immovable thing, and that is dangerous in the best possible way. Now let me tell you something that most people are not willing to say out loud. Men feel heartbreak worse than women do. I know women are going to push back on that immediately. But hear me out, because the evidence is everywhere once you understand the two reasons behind it. The first reason is possession. A masculine man's nature, built into him at a level that goes deeper than personality or preference, is to protect what he loves. To provide for it, to guard it. When a masculine man loves a woman, she does not just become someone he enjoys spending time with. She becomes someone his entire nature has reorganized itself around protecting. He is not just emotionally attached. His identity as a provider and protector has wrapped itself around her. She becomes part of what he is responsible for in his own mind. So when he loses her, when that relationship ends, he does not just lose a person. He loses something his entire nature was oriented around keeping safe. That cuts at a level that goes way beyond emotion. It does not just hurt his feelings, it hits his identity. It challenges something in him at his foundation, because he is wired to protect, and he could not protect this. He is wired to keep, and he could not keep this. And that weight, that specific weight, is something most women have never had to carry. The second reason is options. And this is where people get uncomfortable, but the math is simple. A woman who goes through a breakup can... Now here is something that I want to break down, because this is one of the places where relationships fall apart the most, and it falls apart silently. Men and women do not express love the same way. And I am not just talking about the love languages conversation people have had 100 times. I am talking about something deeper than that. A woman expresses love through words, through emotional presence, through conversation about feelings and connection, and needing to verbally process the relationship consistently. She wants to talk about what they are. She wants to hear it said. She wants the feeling to be named and acknowledged out loud regularly. And she measures how much love is present in a relationship by how often that emotional exchange is happening. A masculine man expresses love through action, through what he is willing to sacrifice without being asked, through what he builds around her without making a speech about what he is doing. He does not tell her he loves her 50 times a day. He rearranges his schedule to handle something she was stressed about. He notices what she needs before she says it, and he goes and gets it done. He puts himself between her and anything that threatens her peace, whether that is a financial problem, a physical danger, or someone who is treating her wrong. He does not express love by mirroring her emotional state. He expresses love by being the thing that holds steady when everything else is uncertain. And here is the critical problem. Women have been taught, by culture, by other women, by the media, to measure love by how much a man mirrors their emotional expression. So when a man shows up quiet, steady, and doing everything, she reads that as emotional unavailability. She thinks he does not care because he is not saying it the way she would say it. And the man who does mirror her emotionally, who matches her feelings, who cries with her, who leads every conversation with his vulnerability, she appreciates that man intellectually. She says she wants that. And her body loses attraction for him almost immediately. She will say she wants a sensitive man and leave the sensitive man for someone who barely texts her back. And people call that confusing when it is not confusing at all. It is just biology. Her emotions say she wants emotional expression. Her body says she wants emotional strength. And her body will always win that argument. Ephesians 5:25 says, "Love your wives the way Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her." Not love your wives the way she defines love, the way Christ defined it, through sacrifice, through giving himself completely, through action that cost him everything. That is masculine love. That has always been masculine love. And the men who understand that stop trying to out-express women and start outliving them. They show their love through what they do, what they build, what they protect, and what they are willing to suffer for. Let me talk about loyalty now, because this is where I think one of the deepest misunderstandings between men and women lives. Masculine loyalty and female loyalty are completely different things. They are not the same measurement applied to different genders. They are fundamentally different expressions of what commitment means. Masculine loyalty is provision, protection, sacrifice. A man who is loyal to his woman is a man who puts her physical safety above his own, who makes sure she and her children have what they need even when it costs him comfort, who shows up when things are hard and does not leave when staying is difficult. And at the highest level, a man who is willing to die for what he loves. There is no higher form of loyalty that exists anywhere in human experience than a man being willing to lay down his life for someone he is committed to. That is the ceiling of what masculine loyalty looks like. Female loyalty is exclusivity, her body, her submission, her complete devotion to one man, keeping herself for him, choosing him over and over again in the small and large moments, not giving to anyone else what belongs to him. That is her highest offering, and when she gives that genuinely to a man who deserves it, that is one of the most powerful things that can exist between two people. Now here is the problem. Women take their definition of loyalty, which is about exclusivity and the belief that desire for others should disappear, and they hold men to it. A loyal man should not want other women. He should not look at other women. He should not think about other women. And if you asked 100 men honestly, not what they would say in public to avoid conflict, but honestly, whether they want multiple women, 99 of them would say yes. If you asked 100 women honestly whether they want multiple men, 99 of them would say no. Men want quantity. Women want quality. We are not wired the same way, and no conversation, no cultural shift, no amount of social pressure is going to rewrite biology that has been operating this way for thousands of years. And here is the thing nobody wants to say. The men who are loudest about how they never think about other women go home and consume every variety of woman they can access on a screen, every type, every combination. Not because they are bad people, because that is how men are actually built. The variety is not a moral failing, it is a biological fact. The question is not whether men want variety. They do, all of them. The question is capacity. Most men do not have the resources, the financial stability, the emotional bandwidth, the provision capacity to genuinely care for more than one woman at the highest level. So for most men, monogamy is the realistic path. Not because it is their nature, but because it is their limit. A man who has built himself to the level where his resources are abundant enough that multiple women and children can be fully provided for and protected without any of them being left lacking, that is a different conversation entirely. Most men cannot get there. But it is important to understand why the wiring exists the way it does instead of pretending it does not. And this brings me to something I want every person watching this to actually think about seriously. Every woman wants the same man. Whether she admits it or not, whether she has convinced herself otherwise or not, what she actually wants at her core is the man who leads, who provides, who protects, who is financially solid, spiritually grounded, emotionally strong, physically capable, and completely committed to building something that lasts. That man exists. But he is 1%, not because God only made 1% of men capable of it, because only 1% of men were willing to pay the price it costs to get there. And that price is not small. It is years of discipline when rest was available, years of sacrifice when the comfortable choice was right there, suffering through failures that most men walk away from and deciding to stay in it and figure out what the failure was trying to teach. Hard choices made alone in the dark when nobody was watching and nobody was going to give him credit for it. He was broken multiple times. in ways that most people never see because he processed it internally and kept moving. He built himself through pain, through loss, through seasons where everything he worked for collapsed, and he had to build it again from nothing. And he came out on the other side of all of it, not unaffected, but undefeated. That is the 1% man. And because most men looked at that path and chose the easier road and stayed average, women end up having to navigate what is actually available, especially when they start moving into their late 20s and they feel the shift happening. The biological value that was abundant at 22 starts its natural decline. The options that were everywhere start narrowing. And a woman who spent her highest value years assuming the 1% was waiting for her starts making different calculations. She starts settling, not because she stopped wanting what she originally wanted, because time is undefeated and the market responds to it whether she acknowledges it or not. Now here is the distinction between the women who win and the women who do not. And this is important. The woman who wins is not always the woman who found the finished product. She is not always the woman who landed the 1% man when he was already complete. Sometimes, and this is the version that plays out over and over in real life, she is the woman who found the man while he was mid-build, while he was still becoming, while the work was not finished and the results were not visible yet. And she had the wisdom and the discernment and the patience to see what he was building toward and lock in beside him before the world recognized it. The woman who accepts a man fully, who understands not just his strengths but his current limitations and chooses to work alongside his vision anyway, she tends to win in the long run, because she was not just looking for a man to provide for her in the moment. She was looking at his trajectory, at his character, at what he was building toward for his legacy and his bloodline. And she chose to be part of that. She wins for herself. She wins for her children. She wins for generations she will never live to meet, because she chose a winner before he won. And she stayed committed to that choice when staying was not comfortable and the outcome was not yet obvious. And I want to be honest about something because this conversation demands honesty. Both sides of this are selfish, and that is not a criticism. That is just accurate. A man who is genuinely building something real is selfish by necessity. He cannot give his woman all of his time because the mission requires most of it. He's working when she wants him present. He is focused when she wants his attention. He is sacrificing experiences she would rather share with him because the work requires it right now. And a woman who has not been taught to understand what she signed up for in choosing an ambitious man will misread all of that as a lack of love. But his resources, everything he builds, everything he creates, everything he earns through all of that sacrifice and focused work goes to her, goes to his children, goes to the family he is building. That is his love made material. That is what provision looks like from the inside, and a woman is selfish by design. She seeks the best available option for herself and for the children she might one day have. She should. That is her nature operating correctly. That instinct exists to protect her bloodline. The problem is that most women do not actually hold to that standard consistently. They give up the highest thing they have, their body, their time, their youth, their attention, their peace, to men who have not earned any of it. Men who gave them attention and called it interest. Men who slept with them and called it connection. And then they want the man who spent a decade suffering and grinding and refusing to quit, the man who paid every price and built himself from the ground up, to come in and rescue them after all of that has already happened. And I want to say this carefully but clearly. A woman's body is her highest currency, not because her worth is physical, but because what she gives physically carries a weight that cannot be undone. And the highest form of self-betrayal a woman can commit is spending that currency on men who treat it like it has no value. Because every time she does that, she is not just giving something away, she is rewriting what she believes she is worth. Now I want to come back to where I started and close this the right way, because everything I have talked about tonight comes back to one central truth. A real man has been broken, not once, multiple times, in multiple ways. He has loved people who left. He has built things that fell apart. He has given his trust to people who used it against him. He has sat in silence with more weight on him than most people will ever carry, because silence is what men do when words are not enough and weakness is not an option. And every single one of those breaks, every loss, every failure, every season where the ground disappeared underneath him, either destroyed him or it sharpened him into something that nothing could break again. The ones who came through it, who did not quit, who did not numb out, who did not run from the pain but sat in it and let it teach them, those are the real men. Real men have scars, not as decoration, as proof that he went through fire and he is still standing, and women feel that whether they can articulate why or not, that is why women are drawn to warriors, to fighters, to older men who carry something behind their eyes that younger men simply do not have yet. It is not the age they are attracted to, it is what the age represents, what he survived, what he lost, what he chose to rebuild instead of abandoning. Security is what women ultimately seek in a man, and you cannot provide real security if you have lived a pain-free, challenge-free, consequence-free life. A man who has never been tested has never proven he can hold anything together when things fall apart, and things always fall apart eventually. Real security comes from a man who has already been through the collapse and rebuilt, who has already faced the worst and did not break under it. That is what women feel when they feel safe with a man. Not just his size or his income or his confidence, the weight of what he has survived and the fact that he is still here. Most women settle for less than that, and then they spend years fantasizing about the man they actually wanted, about what it would feel like to be with someone who had that depth, who had that weight, who loved the way a man who has been through real things loves. And the men they are with, the ones who have never been challenged, who have never suffered anything real, those men claim they are completely satisfied and completely faithful, and they go home and consume every variety of woman available to them on a screen, which tells you everything about how men are actually wired regardless of what culture wants them to say about it. That is not going away. That is not a social construct. That is thousands of years of human nature showing up in a different format. But here is what I want to leave you with, because this is the point of everything I just said. A woman who finds a man who truly loves her, not a man performing love so she stays comfortable, not a man suppressing who he actually is to fit inside what she expects, not a man saying what he thinks she wants to hear, but a man who is completely himself, completely built, completely decided that she is worth everything he has, and she recognizes what she is actually holding and she does not let it go. She wins, not just in the relationship, in life. Because a man who loves deeply does not just love the woman. He builds around her. He protects her from things she does not even know are coming. He gives her the most powerful and rare thing a man can offer. All of him. Not a performance, not a version of himself designed to keep her happy. The real thing, with the scars and the weight and the history and the fire that burned in him and could not put him out. The alchemist does not just transform himself. He transforms everything he commits to. His love does not just exist. It builds, it produces, it multiplies, it outlasts him. If you are a woman, find a man like that and understand what you have. If you are a man, become one. Suffer what you need to suffer. Build what you need to build. Love at the level you were created to love. And let nothing convince you that depth is weakness. Your depth is your power. Walk with God while you work for the crown. When he crowns you king, tell the world of the truth you found. That's king-level mindset. Kings don't beg. Kings don't bow. Kings build.